Jannik Sinner sparked concern and made headlines across the tennis world after abruptly canceling his scheduled outdoor training session just hours before it was set to begin. The world #1, coming off a strange and dramatic match against Grigor Dimitrov, where he was trailing 2-0 before eventually winning due to Dimitrov's retirement in the third, had been booked to train at 4 p.m. on the Aorangi practice courts in London. Some fans were concerned for Sinner, who did not look himself that match, especially after an awkward fall in the first set where he injured his elbow, but fans, reporters, and insiders all expected to see him fine-tuning his game ahead of his high-stakes quarterfinal clash with Ben Shelton, but just minutes before he was due to appear, the booking was suddenly cancelled. The unexpected withdrawal from the public session sent shockwaves through the Wimbledon grounds and quickly became a hot topic among journalists and fans. Was the elbow injury he picked up against Dimitrov more serious than originally believed? Adding to the speculation was the fact that Sinner had arranged to hit with Jacopo Vasami, a promising left-handed junior brought in to help simulate Shelton's game. The matchup with Shelton is expected to be one of the tournament's highlights. That plan too was scrapped without explanation. Earlier that same morning at 10 a.m., Sinner had undergone an MRI scan. Though no official medical report was released by his team, sources close to the player stated that the scan revealed no major problems. Nonetheless, the timing of the test, followed by the canceled training, raised questions about whether Sinner was playing through pain or trying to avoid aggravating something more serious. Later in the day, some clarity finally came from his longtime coach, Darren Cahill. Speaking to Tennis Now and ESPN, Cahill said, "We went to the indoor courts and Jannik rallied for 20 to 30 minutes just to get a feel for the ball. He'll be fine. It was good to be on court. After all, it's impossible for him to take a full day off. He had no issues today." Cahill also acknowledged that Sinner's elbow issue had slightly affected his game in the Dimitrov match, costing him around 10 km/h on his forehand. Still, Sinner managed to hold his ground until Dimitrov was forced to retire. The sudden change of training venue, moving indoors away from public eyes, seemed like a deliberate decision, one aimed at keeping things quiet, focused, and free from distractions. It confirmed what many suspected. Sinner wanted to keep working, but in a more private setting, with less attention and pressure as he monitored his condition. At the post-match press conference, Sinner had hinted at this light approach, saying, "If I don't have any problems, I'll hit a few balls." That plan was clearly adapted in real time, based on how he felt. During the match against Dimitrov, the first warning sign came in the opening game, when Sinner took a bad fall. Though he continued playing, he took 3 painkillers to manage the pain. By the third set, he appeared looser, more fluid in his movement, but we could not judge his readiness as Dimitrov unfortunately suffered a pec tear and had to retire. Still, the sight of the world #1 missing a high-profile outdoor session, especially in the middle of Wimbledon, was enough to stir panic. For fans and commentators, the silence was loud. The biggest question remains, is Jannik Sinner truly at 100%? His game is there, his mindset seems steady, and his team insists there's no problem. But in a tournament where margins are razor thin, even a 10 km/h drop on the forehand could be the difference between victory and defeat. Today came the image most fans feared. A photograph surfaced online showing Sinner walking with his team. The sleeve on his right elbow was unmistakable. It wasn't bulky, but it was enough. Enough to confirm what many had feared. Enough to suggest the pain, the discomfort, or at least the risk was still present. Jannik Sinner wearing an elbow sleeve while continuing to train is, in some ways, a positive sign. It suggests there's no serious injury. The MRI results confirm that, but the real concern now is psychological. Even when cleared to play, players often hold back subconsciously to protect a vulnerable area, which can disrupt timing, confidence, and stroke mechanics. Elbow injuries are a serious issue in tennis and can have a direct impact on every part of a player's game. For someone like Sinner, who relies on powerful, full-stretch ground strokes and a high-tempo style, any strain or tightness in the elbow could become a major limitation. A compromised arm makes it harder to serve with confidence, hit through the ball cleanly, or defend when stretched wide. Even small changes in motion can disrupt timing, control, and rhythm. This development also raises broader concerns about Sinner's match readiness. In this stage of the tournament, opponents are tougher, matches are more physically demanding, and often last well over 2 hours, with a very small margin for error. If he's dealing with any kind of pain or restriction, even if mild, it could affect shot selection, movement, and stamina. What may have been routine earlier in the draw can quickly become a challenge under pressure, especially in potential 5-set scenarios. Another layer to this is Sinner's schedule this season. Since winning the Australian Open, he has played a high number of matches across hard, clay, and now grass courts. In recent months, there have been signs that he's been managing a heavy workload, though until now, there hasn't been much public discussion about physical issues. The elbow concern could be a sign that the demands of the calendar are starting to take a toll. Without clear medical information, it's difficult to draw conclusions. It's possible that the MRI is precautionary and that the issue is minor. Players at this level often deal with soreness or tightness that doesn't rise to the level of a serious injury. Still, the fact that a scheduled training session was cancelled entirely suggests that Sinner and his team are taking the situation seriously. In terms of strategy, a potential elbow problem could also influence how he approaches upcoming matches. Players sometimes adjust tactics to reduce stress on the arm, such as serving with less pace, avoiding risky backhands, or shortening rallies. These adjustments, while sensible from a health perspective, often reduce effectiveness against top-tier opponents who are ready to capitalize on any drop in intensity. For now, everything hinges on what the MRI results reveal and how his body responds over the next 24 to 48 hours. If the issue turns out to be minimal, he may continue as planned with no adjustments. But if there's inflammation or discomfort that doesn't resolve quickly, it could change the dynamics of the next rounds completely. With Sinner seen as one of the main contenders for the title, any sign of physical vulnerability could open the door to new challengers. The uncertainty around Jannik Sinner's elbow comes at a moment when the men's draw is already packed with tension. With Carlos Alcaraz, Novak Djokovic, and a number of other dangerous players still in the running, the slightest shift in form or fitness could swing the entire balance of the tournament. Sinner has positioned himself as the most consistent player on tour over the last 12 months. That consistency is a big part of why he's reached the #1 ranking, but consistency depends on physical reliability, and that's what's now under question. While no one can say definitively how serious the elbow issue is without the MRI results, it's clear that this is not something being brushed off behind the scenes. Canceling a full practice session at this point in the tournament is not routine. Players might skip training if they're playing back-to-back matches or trying to conserve energy, but when there's a medical scan involved, it usually signals some kind of discomfort or concern worth checking. For Sinner, who uses a fairly compact but aggressive motion on both wings, his game doesn't leave much room for hesitation or compensation. If he's not fully confident in his arm, the timing could go off. Balls might sit up rather than drive through the court. He may avoid certain shots or change his point construction. That's the kind of subtle shift that top opponents notice and exploit. At this level, especially on grass where points are shorter and margins are smaller, even a half-step drop in power or control can flip a match. There's also the issue of tournament rhythm. Players prepare carefully between rounds to stay sharp, manage the physical load, and keep their movement tuned to the surface. A canceled practice, combined with potential rest or restricted movement, breaks that routine. For some players, it might not matter. For others, especially those who rely on tight preparation like Sinner, it could disrupt timing and match readiness. Mentally, this development will test Sinner in a different way than most matches have. He's often praised for his calm under pressure, his ability to stay focused and neutral regardless of scoreline or stage. But when something is physically off, that calm gets challenged in new ways. That shift in mindset could make the difference. If Sinner's elbow turns out to be a minor issue and he can return to full practice quickly, this may end up being a brief story that disappears after a solid quarterfinal performance. But if the problem lingers, or if he's forced to adjust his game or enter matches without ideal prep, it could be the kind of situation that impacts not just this tournament, but his summer season as a whole. Hard courts are just around the corner and the calendar doesn't slow down. At this point, the tennis world is waiting to see how Sinner looks in his match versus Shelton. Until then, everything is speculation, but even that level of uncertainty is enough to shift the tone around Sinner's campaign. From being a strong, confident favorite, the focus now includes concern about whether he'll be physically ready to play his best, and that's the kind of development that changes the conversation for everyone involved.